Alright, so I got a special kind of video for you guys today. It's not a tier list, it's not a match reaction, it's not transfer news. Nah, today we are putting together the top 5 managers with the most pressure on them this season. Now, I know people are going to look at this list, see some of the names and say, how can you say this guy has more pressure than someone else? Or how are you saying this guy's under pressure? Let me make this very clear. I'm not trying to say that every manager on this list is going to get sacked if they don't reach their goals. Some of them might, but not all of them, right? But the top 5 managers in Europe's top 5 leagues that more so than anybody else have it all to do this season. All the eyes on them, all the pressure, all the expectation. And for some of them, the expectation is there because of what they've accomplished in the past. For others, it's there because, look, we've been waiting a long time. This feels like crunch time. For others, it does feel like do or die. Let's get into it. My top 5 managers with the most pressure to perform this season. Starting off at number 5, Pep Guardiola. Now. I know that name will send question marks across my entire channel. Why Pep? Pep, the guy who's won, 5 of the last 7 Premier League titles. The guy who has basically shattered every record in the sport. 2-time treble winner, 3-time Champions League winner, largely considered by some people the greatest manager of the modern game. All of that might be true, my people. All of that might be true. However, I'm sorry, last season, that was unacceptable for Pep and Manchester City. The standards that they have kind of set for themselves since that man walked into Manchester City, the levels they've set, the expectations, the point tallies, the mentality of nothing but success matters. Last season all went out the door of the season that they had. And look, there's reasons for why it happened, right? Rodri, that injury. We know when he plays, they don't tend to lose. He goes down, they went on like a 1-13 winning run. It was ridiculous. We saw Erling Haaland freeze for a huge part of the season. We saw Guardiola look incapable of finding a winning solution at times. Now, towards the end of the year, they started to put it together. They had that big January splurge. They've had a big summer splurge as well too. Let's see if there's any remaining business that goes on to happen. But one thing is sure, Manchester City and Pep cannot have the season that they had last year. It's impossible. And for some people, they'll say, well, they finished 3rd. Look, for Man United, they would love 3rd. But for Manchester City, when you look at the quality of players in this team and you look at the status as a manager of Pep Guardiola, that kind of season, falling that far behind the leading pack, I'm sorry, that can't happen again. And when you look at the players that they brought in, right? Cherki. I think there's expectation and pressure on Guardiola to make this guy work because there's already question marks floating around about, well, is Cherki his kind of player? Can he fit a player of Cherki's style into his system? Can he kind of release the shackles on a player like Ryan Cherki? That remains to be seen. Reinders, new signing. He looked good in the Club World Cup. Can he continue that into the next season with Rodri? We look at some other names. James Trafford, new goalkeeper in charge. Omar Marmoush, January signing. Where does he fit into it when everybody is healthy? And then I look at the forgotten 3 at this point. Big name signings that he made in January that so far we haven't seen too much of. Kusanov, Gonzalo, and Vitor Rice. Now, maybe the latter is kind of like a signing for the future. I can accept that. But the first 2 were brought for big money, expected to turn around the season last year. And I'm sorry, bar a few early cameos from the 2 of them, almost became forgotten men. And then in the Club World Cup, we barely saw any of them. We barely saw either of the 2. So, look, I think there is a lot of pressure on Pep Guardiola and Manchester City this season. I'm not going to say he has the most pressure in all of Europe, hence why he's at number 5. But his resume and his reputation that precedes this season is also a reason why he has so much pressure. If we didn't know Pep Guardiola as the all-encompassing generational manager that he was, let's be real, he wouldn't have the same kind of pressure. But because it's Pep, we all know this season, he cannot afford to have the same mistakes he did last year. Another thing as well too, right? Before I go on to number 4, we've seen Pep reluctant to kind of let go of a bit of the old guard. I know De Bruyne has left center stage this season, off at Napoli this year. But let's talk about Gundogan. Let's talk about Bernardo Silva. Let's talk about Kovacic. Let's talk about Akanji. Let's talk about John Stones. Does Pep have the ruthlessness that he previously showed throughout his career? He previously showed he is a very ruthless guy when it comes to coaching a team. But will he have similar ruthlessness with this group of players that in the past have given him so much success, but very clearly maybe aren't the same players they were before and have to take an exit on the left, similar to De Bruyne, to allow this new group of City players to come in? All eyes on Pep this season. He's at my number 5. At number 4, we're leaving the Premier League and we are going to Italy. We're going to Serie A and we're going to Inter, who this season, this summer, lost Simone Inzaghi and replaced him with club cult hero Christian Chivu. Now, I made a video on this previously when the appointment was made, and I said, look, I feel for Christian Chivu. I think this is an impossible job. You're taking over a manager in Simone Inzaghi that, even despite how last season ended, finishing trophyless when at one point you looked poised to win a treble, Simone Inzaghi was still covering massive cracks throughout this football club. And I say club, not just the team, but throughout the club. The ownership, the spending, the decision-making, the age of the squad, the transfer windows, all of it was less than ideal. And yet, he had Inter on course to compete in all three competitions they faced. And ultimately, they ran out of steam in all three competitions. And I'm not trying to take any blame away from Inzaghi's feet, because at the end of the day as well, too, I think that his team were the favorites in Serie A and should have won that. There's no reason they should be losing to that Napoli team, who aren't as talented as his. And in the Champions League, despite losing to an amazing team in PSG, the fashion in which they lost, I put a lot of it at his feet, because I personally believe his head was turned by negotiating with Al Hilal all throughout that week. However, Inzaghi is gone. And no matter what you want to say, I know Inter fans are still sour about the way it all went down. There's no debating Inzaghi was an amazing coach that was most definitely elevating the ceiling of that Inter team. They were not as good in terms of like competing in 2 out of 3 Champions League finals in 3 seasons. That's not the quality of team that they were. But I think the management had a huge say in that. And now they're replacing Simone Inzaghi, and in his place comes, let's be real, a relative novice at this level in Christian Chivu. Christian Chivu is a good dude. Leads Inter, Champions League treble winner in 2010, coached throughout the academy levels, coached throughout the youth levels at Inter, coached for 13 games at Parma, and now has been entrusted with one of the biggest jobs in world football, Inter. And he's coming off what has been a disastrous end to the season for them, if we're including the Club World Cup as well. That Champions League final loss was maybe the biggest humiliation in the modern history for the club, and then the Club World Cup probably came too early for them, right? I mean, it was very clear that they were fighting demons of a few weeks prior of that Champions League final. And in it, they failed to beat Monterrey, qualified by the skin of their teeth, and then lost to Fluminense. I know Fluminense went to the semifinal, but no one was expecting them to beat Inter. And the way that they did it, it was a humiliating end to the season for Inter. And now Chivu kind of bears the brunt of responsibility, and it is a lot of responsibility to rebuild this Inter side. But get this, without any money. He's been entrusted with bringing in young players, which is definitely something Inter needs because it's an aging squad. But when you're rebuilding an aging squad, there's only so much you can do with limited resources. So Çalhanoğlu will remain at the club. That's already been decided. Mkhitaryan remains a big player for them. Acerbi is slowly starting to be phased out, but he's still in amongst the team. Sommer is over 35 years old. All throughout this team, it's still an aging team. And they're being asked to go and try and repeat what they did last year, but under a manager that, unfortunately, it's not his fault, but isn't half the manager Inzaghi is yet. So I think he has a lot of pressure on him, because Inter, no matter what, will have aspirations to win the league like they couldn't do last season. Go far in the Champions League like they did last season, like they always do. But they're expecting to do it without spending a lot of money, but with a different manager. And I think Chivu, unfortunately, is not Simone Inzaghi. I would love for him to be able to return Inter to where they deserve to be. But I think this is a damn near impossible job. And it's made even more impossible by his track record. And unfortunately, I could very well see Christian Chivu leaving this job halfway through the season and not on his own accord. I think he's under a lot of pressure. And for that reason, he goes at number 4. At number 3, let's go to Spain and let's go to Madrid. Hollywood. And it's not just Hollywood because of all the stars. It's Hollywood because of all the drama. Real Madrid is a mess. They're a mess. They're an absolute mess. And the latest man entrusted to fix the mess is Xabi Alonso, former Real Madrid cult hero. I won't go as far as saying legend, icon, because I think Real Madrid have had too many of that ilk to just call anybody that. Alonso was a great player for them, but we'll say cult hero, right? He's a fan favorite, and he's a legendary player, and is on course to have a legendary career if his Leverkusen stint is anything to go off of. But this job is tough. This job is very, very tough, not just because of the size of the club, not even from a tactical point of view, but from an ego point of view. I think Xabi Alonso has already learned very, very quickly that this Real Madrid job is difficult. Last season, they entered the year as everybody's favorites to win everything in the sport. They were coming off a Champions League and league-winning campaign where they lit up Europe. Vinicius Jr. put together a Ballon d'Or contender season. Jude Bellingham announced himself to the world as a bona fide superstar. And it was a team that were purring on all fronts. And on top of that, they added Kylian Mbappe, a long-term target. Everybody knew that was the worst-kept secret in sport. And they were expected to become even better because they were adding arguably the best player in the world to the best team in the world. What went on to transpire was anything but that. Real Madrid absolutely collapsed last year. Kylian Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. as a duo never got it together. Both of them performing at opposite ends of the spectrum. Vinicius performing when Mbappe wasn't. Mbappe performing when Vinicius wasn't, leading to many question marks about whether the two of them can even mesh together. Jude Bellingham, who was so brilliant the year before, was sacrificed in almost every way you can imagine, playing right wing back at times, having to drop deep into midfield, collect passes from deep, defend all the time, not able to make those late surging runs he wanted to because Mbappe and Vinicius are already in those spaces that he likes to take up. Rodrigo was the odd man out. He is kind of being ushered out the side door. Defensive issues for days because of injuries and then because of mishaps. It's just kind of a mess at Real Madrid, and they still have yet to replace the gaping hole that was Toni Kroos. No one has replaced him yet. And look, the Club World Cup showed signs that Alonso is capable of fixing this mess, right? Because for most of it, I think he really had a good thing going, especially when he brought over his preferred three at the back formation, where Trent was playing as a right wing back. Of course, they brought in Trent, they brought in Dean Huijsen. Trent at right wing back, Huijsen in charge of the build-up from deep, Tchouaméni almost playing as an auxiliary third center back, but also being allowed to move into space. Goulet being a revelation in midfield next to Jude and Valverde, and Vinicius starting up front next to the new kid in town, Gonzalo Garcia. And that took them all the way to the semifinals of the Club World Cup. And they really put together some good performances. I was impressed for a lot of that tournament from Alonso. And then disaster struck again. They played PSG, who I still believe are the best team in the world, and PSG absolutely embarrassed them. They embarrassed them 4-0, but it wasn't just the scoreline that made it embarrassing. It was the manner in which they really taught Real Madrid and Kylian Mbappe a footballing lesson. You need to press to win games in the modern day. You cannot have passengers in 2025 in football. And off the ball, Real Madrid have too many of them. Vinicius and Mbappe's defensive work rate in that game was absolutely humiliated in contrast to the likes of Ousmane Dembele, Desiree Doué, Barcola when he came on, Kvaratskhelia. It was a lesson in how to press off the ball in 2025. And it was damning. And it really leaves a lot of question marks because Alonso's biggest challenge this year will be getting Vinicius and Mbappe to buy into that side of the game. Now, Vinicius has shown in the past that he's a willing presser. He's a hard worker. But Kylian Mbappe, to this point, has never shown a willingness to really be a guy from the front that leads the press. Leads, from example, off the ball. He's never been that, right? He's a guy that takes time off the ball, right? That's his time to recharge. That's his time to kind of take a breather. But that's not afforded in the modern game, and PSG showed that to perfection. And then Chelsea showed it again in the final as well, too. So Alonso's got a massive task on his hand, getting those two guys to buy into his methodology, to buy into his ideologies, right? And then on the ball as well, too. How much both of them are left side dominant. Everything about them means they want to drift into those left hand pockets. I still have question marks over Mbappe, whether he's an out-and-out center forward. I still think he's at his best when he's playing out wide, off of a center forward. And then it remains Jude Bellingham as well, too. He likes to play in that left pocket. What happens to Rodrigo? There's a lot of question marks for Real Madrid. And that's why there's so much pressure on Xabi Alonso. Because it's not just getting the formation rate, as so many have asked. Is he going to play 3? Is he going to play 4? That doesn't really matter, man. It's dealing with the players of Real Madrid. Getting the squad to buy in. Because if they do, you're looking at the most talented squad in world football, bar none. Everywhere you look, world-class players. Quality's not an issue here. Personnel might be. Profiling might be. And then on top of that, the fact it's Real Madrid, Los Blancos, the Royals. Come on, man. This is it. This is as high as it gets. This is the most pressure you can have in sport. Playing for Real Madrid. And Alonso will know that because he's played at this club. He's won the biggest honors at this club. But I'm sorry, there is no bigger pressure than Real Madrid. And that's why Xabi Alonso comes in a third, especially because he's been tasked with ending Barcelona's dominance of the last season. What Barcelona showed last year, whooping Real Madrid 4 times in a row. There's a lot of pressure on Alonso because a season like Real Madrid had last year, going trophyless in terms of major competitions, cannot go a second time in a row. It's impossible. Alonso, a lot of pressure on you because if it doesn't work, it's not going to be Mbappe's head on the chopping block. It's not going to be Jude's. Probably won't be Vinicius's either. It might be yours. We've seen managers with more repertoire than you go on the chopping block. So at third place, I got Xabi Alonso. At number 2, Mikel Arteta. You guys know the expression. What's understood doesn't need to be explained. Mikel Arteta is under pressure this season. Now, Mikel Arteta has done an amazing job bringing Arsenal from complete afterthoughts in the Premier League title race, to a side that couldn't even qualify for the Champions League, an embarrassment, a shadow of their former self, into a team that every single season we look at and say, this is a challenger for the Premier League. This is a contender for the Premier League. This is one of the strongest sides in Europe. This is one of the best coach sides in Europe. We all know that. And he deserves massive credit for that. No doubt about it. It's one of the best rebuilds I've seen at a major football club in the last decade. Nothing taken away from him in that regard. But I'm sorry now, 3 seasons in a row of finishing second. And I'm not trying to paint that as a negative. Look, he finished second. He didn't finish 8th. That's not a negative. But I'm sorry, we've reached the point now in Arsenal's rebuild where they're at a stage in their process that it's pointless looking at the past now. The journey to get to this point has been a beautiful one. It's been an inspiring one, but it is now largely an irrelevant one. Arsenal are no longer that side in 2019 that were getting smoked by Chelsea in a Europa League final. They're no longer that side that were getting outshot by like 50 against Watford. They're no longer a side languishing in the bottom half. They're a side with aspirations of winning every single title available. And yes, a large part of that is due to Mikel Arteta's work. But now it's time to get over the line. Now it's time to finish the job. And second place 3 times in a row shows that they're nearly there. They're nearly there. But this is where the margins become really, really thin. And this is where champions become champions and pretenders ultimately show themselves for what they are. Mikel Arteta is under massive pressure this season to get the job done. Simple as that. Get the job done. And he can't complain about backing this summer. Last summer, I thought the transfer window Arsenal gave him was an absolute disgrace. It was. Even before a ball was kicked. That's not with hindsight. I thought that was a poor transfer window for a team looking to get over the line. This summer, they've gone big. They've gone big. Zubimendi in midfield. I think it's a terrific pickup. Gyökeres, the leading scorer in all of Europe for the last year. A terrific pickup. Madueke, a guy I'm less than convinced of if he's playing on the left, but clearly someone Mikel Arteta has earmarked as a really promising player, a player that could potentially explode under the right kind of management. And if the rumors are to be believed, Eberechi Eze is days away from joining the club as well too. A real creative spark that I think the side was missing last season. You add those 4 players alongside the depth of Norgard, the depth of Mosquera, the depth of Kepa. Hopefully a full season of Bukayo Saka. Declan Rice still at the heart of the midfield. Saliba and Gabriel forming the most dominant center back partnership maybe in world football. It's a top team. And it's a team now that, I'm sorry, no more excuses. It's time to get the job done. And look, Arsenal fans will say if we finish second again, well, you can't fire Arteta. And I'm not trying to imply that. But I also understand how humans work. And I think if Arsenal falls short of their main objectives being the Champions League, the league, I think heads will start to turn a little bit. Not in terms of like, oh, fire Arteta, but is this ever going to happen? When is it going to be our turn? When is it going to be our turn to get over the line? We've seen Liverpool do it. We've seen City do it. We've seen sides in Europe do it. When is it our turn? It's not like we don't have the squad anymore to do it. And we believe Mikel Arteta is the manager to do it. I believe Mikel Arteta is a fantastic coach. But when is it going to be us? I think if it doesn't happen this year, especially after the window that they've had, I think people will start to question that a whole lot more. And again, this is not me saying sack Arteta if he doesn't win the Premier League. I'm not saying that. But I think it's at least time to ask the question, could someone get us a little further than he currently is? Because again, for Arsenal to win the league, they don't need to hire a manager that would have done what Arteta did to get them to this point. That job is already done, and we give him credit for it. But now it's about the next step. And if they don't do it this year, I think it will be an appropriate question to ask. Is there someone else that might be able to? He's number 2 on my list. And at number 1, to no surprise to anybody, right? I think this should be consensus. I don't think anyone should even question this. The manager with the most pressure on him to deliver this season in all of Europe is Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim is the manager with the most pressure on him this season. Last year, Manchester United put together the most embarrassing big side season I have ever seen in my life. I'm talking AC Milan at their worst. We're talking the modern era, right? I'm not talking about sides getting relegated in the 60s, City getting relegated before they got bought. I'm talking in like, you know what I'm talking about. Let's not pretend like I'm saying something crazy here. In the modern game, this is the worst season from a supposed big club I have seen. Liverpool at their worst never fell as low as United last year. Arsenal at their worst never fell as low as United last year. Inter, AC Milan, Juve, Bayern, Barcelona, Chelsea. Chelsea, for my reckoning, had the worst season I'd ever seen by a big club a few years back under Graham Potter. Man United finished below that side. Man United finished below that side. They finished 15th. And on top of that, put together one of the most embarrassing performances in the Europa League final to a side that never wins anything. They broke their curse. That was respite for the season. That was a saving grace. It was one last chance to make things right. And for 60 minutes of that game, Ruben Amorim's tactic to win was pump the ball up to Harry Maguire. And in conclusion, Man United finished 15th out of Europe for this season and going into this year with more questions than answers. Now, that's on face value what it looks like. Obviously, there is more context to be applied, right? I'm not delusional here. Ruben Amorim wasn't given a transfer window last season. He came in halfway through the year, a quarter of the year in to a struggling side that had never had any experience of playing his system. He wasn't given enough players in January. The side let go of players while bringing them back in. I get all of that. It's not a great team anyways. But 15th, without Europe, that's the bottom, right? Because United's not going to get relegated. I hope. United's not getting relegated. If we're all banter aside, all jokes aside, let's just be realistic here. Man United's not going to finish in the bottom three. They're not. This is basically as realistically as worse as it can get. It can't get worse realistically than what it was last season. 15th without Europe. The bar is on the ground. And whether you blame Amorim 100%, 50%, it at least is 1 to 2%. He has blame attributed to him. I'm not saying he's the only one with pressure this season, but he is the head of the snake. This year, he's got a full preseason. He complained a lot last year that he didn't have enough training time with the team to get them attributed to his system. This year, he's got a full preseason. He's already started bringing players in. He himself said he didn't want to sell Bruno Fernandes for £100 million. So that's a big part of his team as well, too. And I'm not asking Ruben Amorim to win the league for Man United. This is where pressure is different, right? Ruben Amorim's pressure isn't to win the league like Arteta's is, or to win the Champions League like Real Madrid's is. But I'm sorry, to return United to a respectable position is the bare minimum. And the fact that I'm seeing people still say, under this manager, yeah, the expectation is probably 10th, 9th, just finish the top half. I'm sorry, we're bad. But the expectation for Man United cannot be just finish top half. Ruben Amorim needs to return a level of respectability to this side. At least get them back into Europe. And when I look at the first few games of his season, you're looking at Arsenal, first game of the year. You're looking at Liverpool. You're looking at City. Chelsea, I think, in the first 10 as well, too. It's a tough start to the season for Manchester United. Meaning, a tough start results-wise puts this guy even more under threat in terms of his job. A poor start to the season could completely kill Ruben Amorim's tenure as Man United manager within 10 games. A good start, let bygones be bygones, we continue under this manager. But make no mistake about it, if Ruben Amorim and Man United don't start this season like a house on fire, this guy will not last until December. And we talk about pressure cooking environments. Real Madrid, without a doubt. After Real Madrid, is there a side with more pressure at the top as manager than Man United? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. This is arguably the highest pressure environment in world football. And Ruben Amorim's coming off the worst season the club has had in their modern history. Nobody has more pressure to deliver this season than Man United and Ruben Amorim. So, I'm sorry, this one is a no-brainer. Number 1. So, just to go over my list one more time. Pep Guardiola at 5. Christian Chivu at 4. Xabi Alonso at 3. Mikel Arteta at 2. And Ruben Amorim at number 1. Let me know what you guys think about my list. Who would you guys have included? Who would you guys have left out? Am I being too harsh on anybody? Am I being too lenient on anybody? Let me know down in the comment section down below. I'm going to wait for a few more transfers to happen to make this list for players. The players under the most pressure to deliver this season. That will be coming very, very soon. Trust me. I'm keeping an eye out on a few guys this year. But this is just the initial manager's list. Let me know what you guys think of my list down below. Like, share, subscribe. Again, thank you for 70K. We're already on course for 80, man. We're almost at 72,000 already. The journey continues. I can't do it without you guys. And that being said, I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.